Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond, broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
Back at you in Gloves Off, and today we have a great guest from Washington, D.C., Tanawah M, a legal strategist, and we're going to touch base on the court systems, what's wrong with the court systems, and what's basically what the problem is that's going on right now. How are we doing today? Doing good?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you for having me, brother. Thank you.
No, thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's very interesting, and a lot of people don't know until they get involved in a lawsuit or they get involved with the court systems, how, I wouldn't say corrupt if you want to put that word in there, but how difficult it is to maneuver. And
well, so I would like to say, let's not change what it is. Right. We've got to be honest with ourselves as much as honest with the system. I had a conversation with the president of the Texas Republic just a couple weeks ago, and he said to me that the things that I'm doing, that when I call a judge a criminal, then I'm not going to get the outcome that I want. He said that I need to say, well, they made a mistake or they made an error. And I got to say, I will not do that. If you walk like a duck and you talk like a duck, I'm going to treat you like a duck. Right?
Absolutely.
The law is in place for a specific reason. The definition of a criminal is one who transgresses the law. And it doesn't matter if it's the Constitution of the United States or it's a state statute. If you transgress the law, you are a criminal. So I'm not going to call criminals honorable that made a mistake, because a mistake is not a crime. Breaking the law is a crime. So I'm going to call them what they are, because that's what they are until such time as they decide to return to the statutory law. So when you say, well, I don't want to call it corruption, it is corruption. That's exactly what it is. And it can't be called anything else. And we've got to be honest about this, because until we're honest about it and hold them accountable for the crimes that they commit in their acts of corruption, then we will never solve this problem.
I understand your rationale, but what I'm trying to say is a lot of people don't understand it. And once they go inside and they start seeing everything, and they come outside being bewildered and goes, did we just witness corruption at its fullest? Or is this just a pantomime that's going on? And you see it in the family courts. You see it left and right all the time. And you see judges doing whatever they want. In fact, we just saw a judge do whatever he wants to a president of ours. So it's out of hand. Now, how can tighten that or bring it back in? What's the solutions that you would say?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Let's go ahead and let's get honest about what's happening. Okay, you're right. These judges at the state level are out of control. So in the last 10 months, I've been in no less than 70 courtrooms across 12 states where the judge has said something to the effect that the Constitution does not apply, not in my courtroom. Right? We have this documented on transcripts. We have it recorded. We have numerous judges across the country making that exact statement. And that is an egregious statement that is in violation of the faith and belief of 330 million Americans. So, what I'm doing is I want us to understand, what is the supreme law of the land? Is this the United States of California or the United States of Washington? Right? Do I fight for Texas or Alabama when I'm in the military, or do I fight for America? And America is a union of 50 partially governed states with a centralized governing structure. We create the laws, And then we ask the government to govern us in accordance with those laws. Those laws are very simple. They're 4 pages long. But here's the problem, and this is what everybody needs to understand, is that if the lowest court in the nation, the state court, if it's able to deprive us of rights that the highest court in the country cannot rob us of, then whose court is more powerful? The state court. The state court is more powerful than the Supreme Court today. That's why we are standing up and challenging the Supreme Court of the United States. Either Supreme Court, you are what you say that you are, and can do the things that you say you can do, or go home. You no longer have an institution. You don't have the power that you say that you have, and you are not what you say that you are. You are a liar. So either the Supreme Court steps up and asserts its supremacy and gets all these lower courts to do what they themselves are constitutionally obligated to do, or leave us alone, go home, shut down your institution, and leave us at our own accord out at the edge to try to figure out how we're going to solve this problem. But Supreme Court, if you are what you say you are, then it's time for you to assert your supremacy, right? Exercise your power and get the lower courts to obey what you yourselves have put into place. And if you're unwilling to do that, then you have no institution. So,
Absolutely.
So there's what's known as the doctrine of master servant. And it says that a servant performs mechanical duties on behalf of his master. And in the course of his duties, he will always side with what is in the best interest of his master. So that can be understood by anyone. If I work for ABC attorneys, right, I'm going to do what is in the best interest of ABC attorneys in the course of my duties and obligations. So when a judge works for the state of Texas, right, and it's the state of Texas that is asserting a lawful allegation against you, either in criminal court, in family court, whatever it might be, if an agent of the state asserts an accusation against you, thereby enforcing the laws against you, the state has become a party against you. And as a result, all parts of that body of men that make up the state will work against you to advance the interests of their master. So we can expect that in a state, when the state has become a party in that cause, that we will see exactly what we see today, that the state judges will advance the interests of their master. But
Absolutely.
the Supreme Court of the United States has a different master, right? They work for a different master. They work for United States of America in the preservation of America. And that's why the Supreme Court is going to side with me, right? We already have indication that they're backing this. Justice Gorsuch has written a judicial notice to every single federal judge that is consistent with what we're asking. We know that Justice Thomas supports it because of his background. We know that Justice Sotomayor supports it. We know that Justice Brown supports it. We have 4 known justices that are in full support of what it is that I'm arguing and bringing forward. And so now, you mentioned that there's a lot of people across America that don't understand what's going on because they've never experienced, the true corruption and everything. And that's because there's an old philosopher, Peter Parker, and he said that there's 2 types of fools that exist. There's those that choose to believe in something that isn't real, and there's those that refuse to believe in what is real. And America's made up of a whole bunch of fools. I hate to say that, but we have a whole bunch of fools that are out there that believe in something that isn't real. And I used to be one of them. Up until about 9 years ago, I was on the other side. And I was advancing the interest of the United States of America. I was very high up in national security. The last job that I had, I was a chief architect and managing consultant for Los Angeles World Airport's surveillance implementation program for national security. The next project that we were bidding on was the Pentagon's video surveillance implementation program. I was considered a shoo-in for the chief architect of that. So I used to be on the other side, and I believed in America because I believed in American principles. I believed in it. But I'm a fool for having done so, because there's a difference between an application, and you don't know application until you experience it. Once you experience it, then you can realize that what I believe in is not real. And so I'm out here trying to bring a new reality to America to let us know what you believe in. And if so, if we continue down that path, then every single man, woman, child across America will be enslaved by the system. Or we can say, no, this is not what we believe in, because we were founded upon truth, justice, and all these wonderful American principles that don't exist today. They don't exist today because the people we put in place are refusing to recognize and respect the will of the people and the laws that they have established. So
Absolutely.
people used to believe in what is real, and they're the other kind of fool. And I believe they're a bigger fool than the American people, because the American people, we believe in something great, and what we believe in are the laws that bind us together, the United States Constitution. And if we follow the United States Constitution, we will not have the injustices that we are experiencing across America today. And so we've got to decide, what is the supreme law of land? Is it the laws of California, or the laws of Washington, or the laws of Texas, or is it the laws of America and what we establish as America? When we decide what it is that we believe in, I believe that then we will have a significant turning point for our nation, because we will realize that the things that we have done in our ignorance was wrong, and now we need to make them right.
Absolutely. You know, I've been in court, and you know, when you go into a court, state court, a district court, the lawyers become officers of the court.
Right. They are. Yeah. So an attorney's first duty is to the court and the judicial machine. That's not to the client. And that's a very, very sad statement to make. But the good news is, when they talk about first duty, because an attorney's first duty, they swear is a first duty to protect the judicial machinery. Before anyone walks into their path, before they take on any case, their first duty was made to the court, protecting the court. But the good news is that the first duty for the judge is to the Constitution. The same reason. The judges in every state, they are the weakest point. They're the linchpin that binds it all together. These judges, their first duty, before anybody walks into their courtroom, they made an obligation, a promise by oath or affirmation. They will do what the Constitution of the United States says. They formed a contract by and between the people. And terms of the contract can be found within Article 6 of the Constitution, where it's the judges in every state will be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws may state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So that establishes the obligation. You see, the people of the United States have the right to due process of the law, because the judges in every state have the duty to ensure those rights are provided. The judges were created to be the guardians of liberty. They were there to protect the minority from the majority. Their purpose was to protect the accused. And they have lost their way, brother. Lost their way. And they're
what I was trying to tell you, I've seen several lawyers, which are officers of the court, commit fraud, perjury, theft, and they are still there. Nothing has happened. But if you or I were there, we'll be wearing orange in a heartbeat. And that needs to stop, you see? And that's the corruption that I've seen. I've experienced that. It's happening right now. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And everybody kind of just like, well, you know, we can't do anything because it's in the court. And the judges wish it's happening. And I think judges need to either, I don't know if they have to be held responsible for their actions. And I don't know if there is such thing as they can be, you know, for negligence of what happens in the court. And I don't know if that's happening or not.
So the thing that most people don't understand is that there's two different types of immunity. There's two different parts of immunity. Okay, so there's civil liability and there's criminal liability. So when you look at absolute immunity, you look at judicial immunity, you look at prosecutorial immunity. Those are the three primary types of immunity. Qualified immunity. Well, immunity, if you read Black's law definition of all three of those, it is immunity from civil liability, right? It doesn't say anything at all about criminal liability. So in 1978, there was a case, United States Supreme Court, called Imbler versus Pacman. That's IMBLER versus PACHPMAN, Pacman. So Imbler versus Pacman. And what the Supreme Court said is that even judges cloaked with absolute civil immunity for centuries can still be held criminally liable for willful deprivations of constitutional rights. You see, judges don't have immunity from criminal liability. They only have immunity for civil liability. So, but we've gone and we've come to where we believe that they're immune from prosecution. That is a lie. It's a lie. So what I'm doing across the country, where I'm going across right now, and I'm providing service on 32 state attorney generals. I just finished it, right? Just finished it on Friday. 32 state attorney generals. I'm providing criminal affidavits on behalf of affected parties within each one of those states, putting it on the attorney general within their office, on their agent. Right? The agent is notice to principal. So as I serve an assistant attorney general, the attorney general himself is served. These are criminal acts. Now, let me go ahead and tell you what's happening. So here in America, right, we have under Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution, and I think we would all agree that that's part of the Constitution in all intents and purposes because we ratified it and adopted it on December 15th, 1791, so it is part of the Constitution. Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, right? Now, that's pretty clear. You have to have an indictment by a grand jury before arresting someone and holding them over for a capital or an infamous crime. Now, an infamous crime is defined by Title 18, subsection 4083 as any crime punishable by more than 1 year imprisonment in a penitentiary. Now, it's not the amount of time you get sentenced to, but the amount of time you can be sentenced to that makes it infamous. So even if you can only get 3 months, if you can get 2 years, it is an infamous crime and therefore requires the indictment by a grand jury before holding someone over. Now, the problem is, brother, 23 states across America right now that do not conduct a grand jury at all, such as the state of Washington. Article 1, Section 26 of Washington's Constitution says no grand jury shall be drawn or summoned in any county. So in the history of the state of Washington, they have never convicted a person legally and lawfully consistent with the procedures and processes established and codified in the Constitution of the United States. That is a pretty big deal, I would say, right? But they're not the only state that does it. The state of Connecticut, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Michigan, the state of Oklahoma, these are states that are acting in direct willful defiance of the established procedures and processes of the United States Constitution. And same thing with the state of Texas, my brother. The state of Texas, what your Constitution says is that the prosecuting attorney can charge by information or indictment as prescribed by law. They believe that they can use their discretion to determine who gets an indictment and who does not. We have numerous affected parties that never received an indictment by a grand jury, despite the fact that that is required. They were charged by way of information. Now, let me tell you what information is, okay? So Title 18, subsection 555 says that information can only be used as the charging instrument for non-infamous crimes, misdemeanors. Now, what happens with information is that let's say that you get pulled over, right, by the police, and they decide that and it's a lawful pullover. Let's say that they have lawful authority to search your car, right, and let's say that they found drugs, right, on you, on your person, or in your vehicle. It doesn't matter. They found drugs. Who is the accuser now? Would it not be the police officer? Because the police officer found that you were in violation of some statute, some state statute. But the officer cannot be the accuser because according to Article 3 of the United States Constitution, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So if it's the party, if it's a body of men that make up the state, including an officer of the state bringing an accusation against you, then that would mean that the state would not be able to be the party, the judge in the cause, because the Constitution says that the Supreme Court has to be the judge. So in the state of Texas, what they do is they say, okay, the officer is not accusing you of a crime. The information is accusing you of a crime. So now the officer reduces his information to writing in the form of an affidavit and submits it to the judge and says, Judge, I would like you to hold this person over for this offense. It's not going in front of a neutral, unbiased third party. Instead, it's going to another man that's a part of the same body of men that make up the same one that's doing the accusation. So when the officer charges you by way of information and then submits it to the judge, and the judge says, well, I believe that there's sufficient probable cause to assume a crime has been committed, therefore I'm going to order this arrest of this individual. You have no authority to do that, judge, because that is charging by way of information for an infamous crime, because that crime is punishable by more than 1 year imprisonment and a penitentiary. What happens when you're charged by information is that information at common law is considered truth. So this officer is presenting this information at truth. He's saying, I present the following facts to you, Judge. On such and such day, this person did have drugs on him. I found him, and now we know that it's a factual case. Well, unfortunately, state, if you become an accuser through one of your agents, you have no authority to be able to be judge of your own cause, right? That judge has a conflict of interest. He works for the plaintiff, right? He has an automatic duty to recuse himself because he works for the plaintiff. Now, I'll get to the family court in one moment. But when you have information and it's reduced to writing and submitted to the court, and that judge looks at this information and says, okay, I presume that there's sufficient probable cause to assume the crime has been committed. Now he signs it off, orders the arrest of the individual. Well, what happens now is what's known as an irrefutable presumption of guilt. You are presumed guilty based upon the mere fact of a charge because you've never had the opportunity to refute that accusation against you. And in an irrefutable presumption of guilt, it is the presumption that you're guilty until proven innocent. It is a complete switch in the whole legal theology that we have here in America. So you are now guilty based upon the mere fact of being charged with a crime. So you're deprived of your liberty. You're taken to jail. You're treated as though you're guilty because we believe that you're guilty of this crime, right? And now you're guilty until proven innocent. You were never treated as though you're innocent because you were never brought in front of a neutral, unbiased third party to confront the accusation against you from a neutral perspective. So what happens in an irrefutable presumption of guilt is that the burden of proof shifts from the prosecution onto the defense. And this is very well known. Blackstone wrote about this hundreds of years ago. When you have a shift in the burden of proof, now the prosecutor doesn't have to go out and prove that you're innocent or that you're guilty. You now have to go collect evidence to prove that you're innocent. It is a shift in the burden of proof. Now the defendant has to prove his innocence, and the prosecutor no longer has to prove you're guilty. And Blackstone wrote and said that this exact situation occurs when there is a breakdown of due process and the system focuses on speed and efficiency as opposed to established procedures or processes. This is a breakdown of due process and is happening prolifically across the nation. There are millions of people who have had debt placed against them by a fraudulent system that is not following the rules. And when they don't follow the rules, when they act outside of the established procedures codified in the Constitution, that would make their actions unconstitutional, which would then make the outcome or the judgment also unconstitutional, not valid. You don't have to appeal an unconstitutional judgment because it was unconstitutional the moment that the law was broken, which is what I'm doing. So the prosecuting attorney in the state of Texas relies upon an inferior state statute to charge a person by way of information and not by indictment as required by Clause 1 of Amendment 5, that would be deprivation of rights under color of law. Title 18, subsection 242 states, any person who, under the color of any state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, deprives any person of rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime, right? When that prosecuting attorney commits that crime, and that is a per se crime, meaning that I don't have to prove they intended to breach their obligation, simply by virtue of the breach, all elements of crime have been met. Their willfulness and knowledge derives from the promise. You make a promise to do something, you take an oath to do something, you fail to do it. I don't have to prove that you intended to do it. You breach the obligation, therefore you have committed the crime, and that is the crime of perjury. Already implicitly by punishment should you fail to fulfill a promise, right? Now, and perjury is, of course, a crime of public trust. Therefore, you can no longer hold office because guess what? You can't be trusted by the public to do your job, right? So when that prosecuting attorney then hands that to a judge and asks that judge to hold this person over for that capital or infamous crime without having the proper charging instrument in place, that judge has a duty and responsibility to ensure that the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise his power based upon someone else's abuse of power, then the power he exercises is no power at all. And therefore, the moment that he signs that order, ordering the person to be held over for the offense without having the proper charging instrument placed consistent with the Constitution, he just established a conspiracy to deprive of rights, Title 18, subsection 241, which states, when two or more persons conspire for the purpose of depriving any person of any rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. When that judge then hands that order off to an officer and says to the officer, I would like you to go and arrest this individual, that officer also has a duty and responsibility to ensure the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. He's exercised authority based upon someone else's abuse of authority. He himself has committed the same crime and is now implicated due to his negligence, right? But the moment that they arrest that individual without having the proper documentation in place, now they've committed the crime of kidnapping. It is a federal crime because the victim is being held over for ransom in the form of bail. And anytime that you have a deprivation of rights that occur in conjunction with a kidnapping, the punishment as prescribed by law is death. These are very serious offenses that we're involved in right here. Very serious.
Absolutely. Now, with everything going on and what you found out, and you think it's going to be a major shift that's going to change, it should change. Okay. How do you think the states are going to react to what the Supreme Court, if everybody in the Supreme Court sides with what you're doing and what you found out? How do you think it's going to change?
So if you want to predict the future, all you have to do is study the past. Okay. So we've got a great example from 1958 of what's about to happen. Okay. 1958 was Brown versus Board of Education, right? Brown versus Board of Education overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson ruling from 1884, which stated that it was completely acceptable to have segregation in the South, right? Completely fine. We can have separate establishments for blacks, whites, and so on. They said that was fine. It was not fine. It was never fine. But we had to address a constitutional ruling that was made by the Wade Court back in 1884. And we did that through Brown versus Board of Education. So nobody thought in 1958 that Brown would ever, they never even thought it would be heard, let alone that they would side with them. And we know that I was reading some of the books from that period of time, and the justices, they said they didn't even know that they were going to side with it until that morning that they walked in for oral arguments, and they looked up on the side of the building and they said, equal rights under law, right? Equal rights under law. And it was walking in and seeing that sign above the Supreme Court. They said, you know what, we have to side with it. We have to do this. Right? So, I'm not going to say what the outcome is going to be because I do believe a little bit rocky and a little chaotic for the while here. But what I do know is that I'm not fighting for the states, right? I don't think that the state attorney generals are going to do a damn thing over what I just did. I went across the country and I dropped those off. That wasn't for the states. That was for the Supreme Court of the United States. I want them to see what is happening. I want them to walk into that courtroom looking at that sign above those doors saying equal protection under the law. And I want them to say, look at the destruction that has occurred because of your organizations, black predecessors that we have to call honorable every day. There's no honor in those that do not honor the law, and they're not honoring the law. So under their direction, under their supremacy, under their authority, they're permitting every single state to do these crimes, to destroy these families, to commit these heinous acts. The 1,500 people our nation has put to death, 139 of them have been proven to have been innocent after they were murdered. That's horrible. That's disgusting. Another 186 of the remaining were exonerated and placed on death row. That is disgusting. That is 18% of the people that have been placed on death row here in America that were factually innocent. That is not good. And that's happening under their watch. Those 9 people that we have to call honorable. And so my point is that Justice Hugo Black said in 1960, honorable men honor the law. I will not honor men that refuse to recognize and enforce the body of laws that govern this nation after taking an oath to do so. I took the same oath. I will stand up in opposition to them until the day God calls me home or their army retreats. So the way that the states are going to change is that power isn't guns, isn't badges, it isn't a title. Power is the ability to influence others in their future decisions by way of words. It comes by way of dialogue.
And you're listening to you and your concern, your passion that you have after this. You can see that throughout, if it's happening here in Webb County, Texas, it's happening throughout Texas, it's happening throughout every other state across the nation, correct? Now, what I've always said to myself is, how come we do not have term limits? Okay, how come we don't have term limits specifically? Maybe 2, maybe just 1 term limit. Next time we have so many lawyers, the bar can just revolve around who's going to be the judge after the following 4 years. Correct? Now, there's an old saying that goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that's what's going on with these individuals that go in there. They have this absolute power and they think they can do whatever they want and they corrupt themselves. Absolutely. Right. You know what I'm saying? I think I can do whatever I want attitude. And I think that's if things will change, number one, if we had term limits, and second, if we were able to hold them liable for some of the decisions that they're doing.
So here in America, one of the philosophies that we had is that is that the government officials are subject to the people, right? So we do have an institution that believes that they are above the law, that they can do anything they want. I like to go back to scripture because scripture tells us a lot. It helps us understand a lot of things. Paul wrote. He wrote in the book of I believe in the book of Acts. He said that no, it was Romans. In Romans, he said that the law has no power, right? The law is just words, right? It isn't until there's a threat of punishment that the law has power, right? So we could be driving down the street. I could drive 100 miles an hour, and I know that the law says that I'm supposed to be driving 50, but I'll drive 100 miles an hour until I see a cop, and then I see a cop, and I say, oh, I better slow down because now there's a fear of punishment, right? So the system itself today, these state officials, they have no fear of the law because there's no enforcement to it, right? There's no enforcement to it. So they believe that they can do anything they want. They go out and do anything that they want anyway because they have no fear of punishment. So we need them to understand that you are not immune. You are not able to do whatever you like in any manner you choose. You are subject to the laws created by the people. And so again, I'm not so concerned about the judges out at the edge. I'm not so concerned about the there's feedback. I'm sorry. Let me turn this down here. I'm getting some feedback. So again, there's no fear of punishment. So yes, I'm not concerned about the judges or the prosecutors or the people out here at the edge because one, there's too many of them. There's too many battles to fight. I'm concerned about one battle because if I can win that one battle, right? If I can win the one battle at the head, then we can get them to change course. And the moment that they change course, then they will make everyone below them change course as well. The reason why the judges and the prosecutors and everyone else are able to break the law in the way that they are is because their leadership are criminals, right? They're following their leaders and their leaders are criminals. So as long as that leadership chooses to act criminally, we're not going to see any change out here at the edge. So we've got to fight crime from the top down. And that's what I'm trying to do is I'm going to the source of the problem. I'm going to the leadership and I'm saying, you guys are criminals today. And if you don't want to be criminals, if you want to be honorable, then you must act honorably, right? And therefore, you guys have a choice to make. You guys either step up and be honorable to the people of the United States, or I'm going to call you out for the criminals that you are, and that will be all that you will ever be remembered as. You there, bud?
Yeah, you go.
Okay. You didn't hear me there?
I didn't hear you. But repeat it again, a little technical difficulty.
Okay, all right. So I'm not so concerned about all of the prosecutors and judges out here at the edge. Those people are there's too many battles to fight. I can't win them all, but I can win one. And when I win that one, what's going to happen is that they're going to change to a lawful side. So I'm appealing to them and to their good nature. For those 9 justices up in Washington, D.C., I'm fighting crime from the top down because if I can get those 9 justices to accept the fact that today you guys are criminals because you're choosing to act criminally, you're choosing to act unlawfully, and therefore all of these judges and prosecutors out here are able to break the law because you are leading them toward unlawfulness. So if you want to be known as a criminal, continue to act criminally, and thus I will make sure that everyone is aware that our justices are nothing but a bunch of criminals, and that's all that they will be remembered as. Or they can accept the fact that they're in a position leading our country toward morality, and that means that they need to act morally, and they can choose to act to shift to a lawful side after showing them that what you're doing is unlawful. Shift to the lawful side, and in doing so, we will see all of their military, all of their prosecutors and judges will also have to shift with them. We will see a complete shift together because if their leaders are acting lawfully, that will mean that all the subordinates will have to act lawfully as well. So
absolutely
I'm at the top, and if I can I can appeal to them and their good nature, get them to shift. we will see a complete shift in the system. There's going to be bad and rogue judges, but that's what the Civil Rights Act of 1960, 1968, that's what that was addressing. We'll have the same problem today. There will be states that will refuse to give up their slaves, and we will have to address that. But if we can get those 9 justices to self-reflect and to say, I don't want to be a criminal. I don't want to be known as what destroyed America. If we can get them to change and do the right thing, then we will see a complete shift, because with them acting lawfully, they will then direct everyone below them to the same direction. So the way I like to say it is this, is that the issue of criminality will never be solved the way we're trying to do it. We're trying to do it from the bottom up, right? We can't do it that way, because if our country is being led by criminals, people are acting outside of the established code of conduct agreed upon by the majority, the very laws that create their office and give them their authority, then we are going to be led toward crime, and that will produce an environment of criminality, which will then produce a society of criminals. We are simply following our leaders. So if our leaders are leaders toward criminality, we can expect to have a society of criminals. But that means that we have to fight crime not from the bottom up, but from the top down. We must first ensure that we have leaders that are leading our country in a lawful direction, out of love, faith, and obedience to the law, and respect for the people and the laws that they establish. And until we do that, we're not heading in a good direction. So we need to first ensure that we have lawful leaders leading our country in a direction we want to go, not in a direction we don't want to go. And when we do that, then we will start producing a good society of people that will follow the law.
Absolutely. And the next step, you just finished a tour. That's a great explanation of what you're going after, and it's been a battle. You've been at it for a while. And what's the next step right now? What's the next hill that you have to cover over? And say, you know what? Here's where we're at.
So now we need to wrap together all of these affidavits. So I went across the country very, very quietly. It wasn't a bunch of fanfares. We weren't making a whole bunch of noise, because I needed to just get it finished. I needed these states to not be threatened by me and what I was doing. They knew what I was doing. They were communicating. They had people waiting when I got to these sites. But I just did what I was called to do, right? Providing service for 1 or 2 people within the states, bringing to their attention. Because here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. The law of criminal conspiracy of public officials states any person who, having knowledge of any of the wrongs conspired to be done, and who have the power to prevent or aid in the prevention of the commission of same, neglects or refuses to do so, may be joined as defendants in the action. Having brought notice to the attorney generals of 32 states of criminal acts, criminal conspiracy by and between agents of their state, in fact, their own agents, the prosecutors work for the attorney general, bringing notice of a conspiracy that exists between your agents and the judicial branch, the judges, after having brought that notice in a clear, just as clear as I said before, the prosecutor charged by way of information and not by indictment. That's the crime. The judge signed the order when it was the information. That's the conspiracy. The officer went out and performed the arrest without having it. That's the conspiracy as well. And now you have the kidnapping. Now, so I brought this to the attention of 32 attorney generals, top legal officer of the state, 32 different states. I have video. I have signed affidavits. I have witnesses, right? I have hundreds of witnesses of every single one of these that I served, right? Now, after having been made aware of the crimes and the criminal conspiracy that's being conducted and being committed within your state, what do you want to do, Attorney General? Because guess what? If you choose to do nothing, now you are knowingly and willingly engaging in criminal behavior, and now it's a whole different ballgame. Whole different ballgame. So your choice, Attorney Generals, is 1, stop what you're doing and don't start again until you know what the hell the law states you're supposed to do, because clearly you don't know today. Or 2, continue to do what you're doing, in which case you are a traitor to this nation and you are willfully doing it, right? That's a different ballgame. So I'm back in DC now after having provided notice on 32 attorney generals of 32 different states. By their negligence, they have just implicated every single agent of the state because they lead them. And when they don't do anything about the conspiracy, then they are sanctioning a conspiracy. They are permitting it, and therefore they are implicated within it as of this moment. So I would say to those state attorney generals right now that they probably want to reflect very, very quickly and make a decision, because in the next 3 days, I will be in the FBI and DOJ's office. I will be sitting there with the Attorney General of the United States, making him decide what he wants to do. But every single one of you better make a decision. And if you don't make a decision, then just know that that is a decision, and it is the wrong decision, right? So, we went through and we did something that really hasn't been done. It's very difficult to get into the Attorney General's office. It's very difficult to get an Assistant Attorney General to take the paperwork that we were given to them. But we got them to do it. And we got them to do it in 32 different states. So we've done what God called us to do. We've accomplished something that's I mean, I'm still trying to understand the significance of it, but the reality is that we have served 2/3 of this nation, the states of this nation, with criminal conspiracies, undermine the laws of the United States, people put into a position to enforce and recognize and administer the laws of the United States by oath or affirmation, by public trust, that are now showing that they cannot be trusted at all. And that is what people need to see. That's what they need to hear. And that's what's going to be coming out in the next week, 2 weeks, is that I'm going to explain how these people have no right to be in the position that they're in, because they are destroying our country and they're harming our people.
Absolutely. For the folks out there that are coming in, and we're touching base on the corruption that's within our judicial system, right, in our courts, and the movement that is to change that, to be back into the better, to go into the right way, and I heard this the other day. They say, there's the right way of doing things, and then there's the righteous way of doing things. And I said, you're right. So the righteous thing is what you're doing right now, is trying to get everything back again.
Yeah. So I don't want to take any credit for it, because, the reality is that I'm simply doing what I was created to do. If it wasn't for God bringing me to my senses 9 years ago, I was on the other side, and I could have very well lived my life in the same ignorance that all of them are living in right now. But when God brought it to my attention, it showed me that what I was doing was wrong, that I myself was violating the laws of the United States, that I was engaged in a criminal conspiracy to undermine the laws of the United States. I had an oath, and I had to make a decision. And when I made that oath, and when I made that promise to the United States of America, to the people of the United States, when I made that oath, right, I didn't make it with the intent to not fulfill it, right? So I had a choice as of that moment. I could, one, pretend like I didn't know, go about my life, as a traitor to the nation in violation of the oath that I took, or two, I could do something about it. And that's what I have to do. And that's what every single public official has to do. When you are made aware of what is going on, your actions are unlawful, I'm going to tell you right now, okay? No one ever promised that there would be anybody there beside me fighting with me. No one ever said that there would be reinforcements that would come. That oath is with the United States Constitution directly, and every single one of you public officials took that oath, the same oath that I took. When I took that oath, it wasn't because I was going to have a whole bunch of people with me, right? It was because I love my country and I want to see the preservation of her. Because if you are a patriot and you want to say that you love and to protect your country, which is the definition of patriotism, a patriot is one who loves and defends his country. If you love something, then destruction can never be an optional outcome for that that's loved, right? You can never, ever, ever seek the destruction of what you love. So what I have to say to you public officials, right, myself included, I had to make this decision myself. If you say that you love your country, but then in the same breath can't say that you love your fellow countrymen, your country is simply an aggregate of the people, right? How you treat your people is a direct reflection of how you love your country. And today, I don't think you love this country very much. I wouldn't call yourselves patriots. I would be very, very, very cautious about that word, because you guys are not patriots, right? Unless you want to come over here and stand with me and fight with me for the country and the preservation of her, you guys are on the destruction side, and that's not a patriot. That's a traitor. So that's all that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If folks want to get with you and touch base with you, how can they get a hold of you?
So I took an oath that I'll serve this country, and I've served her faithfully every day. Even in my ignorance, I served her faithfully, and I will continue to serve her faithfully until the day that God calls me home. I'm at you guys' availability. I promise God that I will serve and be available. So my cell phone is freely available. 202-604-4473. If you guys are having problems, I have very limited availability, but I want all of you to know that I will not stop until this fight is done. And the only way that will happen is either that army retreats or God calls me home. Those are the only two options that they have. So for those public officials that continue to fight with me every single day, I would suggest that you stop looking at ways to get out of this and start looking at ways to get through this. Because we're not going to be finished until you guys do the right thing. And that's what I had to do, and that's what all of you need to do now. You need to make a decision. Are you a criminal? In which case, continue to act criminally. But if you're not a criminal, then get over here with me and let's start saving this country. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. And folks out there, I know people are going to be, you have to probably play it twice to figure out exactly what's going on, because there's a lot of material you just told us. And a lot of individuals know there's a problem. They just can't pinpoint it. And the solution is with you, and you just said that. And that's the easiest thing the way to go about it. So keep up the good fight. And
you guys are welcome to contact me by email as well. That's Tanawah, TANAWAH at weshallbefree2023.com. That's weshallbefree2023.com. And one last thing is I made a decision 9 years ago that I would not work for money anymore. I will not work for anyone. I will only work for everyone. I do not accept contracts. I do not pursue individual pursuits. I serve the people and what's in the best interest of people. So I don't get paid for this. I will not accept payment, but we do operate on a donation. And so if anybody feels as though they would like to support us, if they like the things that I'm doing, I want to focus on the service I'm providing. Money should not be what I'm passionate about. And so I gave that up 9 years ago because I found that when I was living for money, it was about the things that I had. The measure of my greatness was based upon the things that I had. That's not true. That's a terrible way to live. And so today I live because the measure of my greatness is based upon the things that I do. So if you like to serve somebody and you want to see my service continue, you guys are welcome to be able to donate. We operate like Chime, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. They're all exactly the same. We shall be free. That's WESHALLBEFREE. And I appreciate all of you letting me serve you and your family. And God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for standing up and doing what you're doing, because we need people like you more to stand up. Okay.
There's
and for you, if you want to get involved, reach out. I'll put your phone number and your email on the description. If you all find and like this, press like, share it, ask questions, and let us know where you're calling from. Until brother, we're running out of time, and I want to tell you one more time: keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop.
It's
and folks, stay safe, be safe, and God bless. And we'll see you until next time. Much peace.
God bless. Thank you.